Are you tired of feeling held back by your weaknesses? In this video, we will explore 7 simple steps that draw from Buddhist teachings to help you transform your weaknesses into strengths. 1. Blame is shifted to others. When we face difficulties or failures, it is natural to feel upset. Many people, instead of looking within, tend to blame others for their problems. In Buddhism, blaming others is seen as a distraction from personal growth. It prevents us from understanding our own role in the situation. Blaming others only keeps us stuck in a cycle of resentment and anger. These negative emotions are like chains that prevent us from moving forward. Buddha teaches that all suffering is rooted in attachment, ignorance, and the desire to point fingers. When we shift blame onto others, we are attached to the idea that something outside of ourselves is causing our pain. This external focus diverts our attention from the true cause of our suffering, which lies within our own hearts and minds. We learn to accept that life is impermanent and that difficulties will come, but they are opportunities for us to grow. By shifting the focus away from others and back onto ourselves, we can transform blame into the power of self-awareness. This practice does not mean that we ignore the wrongdoings of others. It simply means that we take responsibility for how we respond to the situation. In Buddhism, there is a principle called right action. Right action means responding to situations with wisdom, compassion, and understanding. It is an invitation to stop reacting impulsively and to instead pause, reflect, and respond from a place of peace and clarity. By not blaming others, we stop reinforcing negative patterns and open ourselves to growth. When we stop blaming others, we gain control over our emotions. We stop feeling helpless or victimized. This shift in perspective allows us to feel more empowered and in charge of our lives. Through mindfulness, we begin to understand that our true strength lies in our ability to respond with wisdom, not in finding fault. 2. Discussions are called arguments. In life, we often find ourselves caught in discussions that escalate into arguments. These arguments can be draining, unproductive, and hurtful. In Buddhism, arguments are seen as a result of attachment to ego and the desire to win or prove something. When we argue, we are usually defending our own sense of self, trying to protect our beliefs and ideas. But this desire to be right only creates division and suffering. The Buddha taught the importance of cultivating inner peace and tranquility. Arguments disturb that peace. When we engage in heated debates, we are often driven by a need for validation or an emotional reaction. This can cause us to lose our temper, say things we regret, and create more suffering for ourselves and others. To turn this weakness into strength, Buddhism teaches the practice of right speech. Right speech is about speaking with honesty, kindness, and mindfulness. It is about choosing words that promote understanding, compassion, and peace, rather than words that hurt or divide. By focusing on clear communication and being aware of our emotions, we can avoid turning a simple discussion into an argument. It is important to remember that every interaction is an opportunity for growth. In Buddhist teachings, the emphasis is placed on listening deeply. When we listen attentively and without judgment, we create space for mutual understanding. Rather than focusing on defending our own views, we can use discussions as a way to learn from others and expand our own perspectives. The goal is not to win an argument but to deepen our understanding and strengthen our relationships. By practicing right speech and listening with an open heart, we transform arguments into meaningful dialogues that promote growth and harmony. 3. Feelings are labeled as sensitive. Many people often label their emotions as too sensitive or overreacting, especially when their feelings are hurt. In a world that values rational thinking and logic, emotions are often dismissed as weak or unimportant. Buddhism, however, offers a different perspective on emotions. It teaches us to honor our feelings and recognize them as part of the human experience. Emotions, according to Buddhist teachings, are neither good nor bad, they simply are. They are transient and impermanent. The problem arises when we become attached to our emotions or try to suppress them. When we label our feelings as too sensitive, we are rejecting them and pushing them away, which only creates more suffering. The key to transforming this weakness into strength is mindfulness. Buddhism teaches us to observe our emotions without judgment. Instead of labeling them as sensitive or weak, we can acknowledge them and allow them to pass naturally. By practicing mindfulness, we learn to accept all emotions, both positive and negative, as they arise. Buddhist meditation practices, such as Vipassana, encourage us to observe the sensations in our bodies and minds without attaching labels. This helps us create distance from our emotions and view them with clarity. Rather than reacting impulsively to feelings of sadness, anger, or frustration, we learn to respond with equanimity, understanding that emotions are temporary and will change over time. When we stop labeling our emotions as sensitive or overreacting, we embrace our vulnerability. This vulnerability becomes a source of strength. It allows us to connect more deeply with ourselves and others, fostering compassion and empathy. Through mindfulness and acceptance, we transform emotional sensitivity into emotional intelligence. 4. Others' flaws are criticized, while ignoring personal ones. It is easy to point out the flaws in others. We all do it, whether consciously or unconsciously. When we focus on the faults of others, we divert attention from our own shortcomings. Buddhism teaches us that focusing on the flaws of others is a distraction. It prevents us from looking inward and working on our own growth. The Buddha emphasized the importance of self-awareness. Before judging others, we must first examine our own hearts and minds. This is known as right view, the ability to see things as they truly are without distortion or bias. When we focus on the flaws of others, we often do so with a sense of superiority or judgment. This judgmental attitude creates suffering for ourselves and others. To turn this weakness into strength, Buddhism encourages us to practice self-reflection and humility. Instead of criticizing others, we should focus on our own flaws and areas for growth. The practice of self-inquiry allows us to recognize our own imperfections and work on them with compassion and patience. Buddhist teachings also emphasize the importance of compassion. When we observe the flaws of others, we should do so with empathy rather than judgment. Recognizing that we are all imperfect beings on a shared journey of growth helps us develop a more compassionate attitude towards others. By transforming criticism into compassion, we build stronger connections and create a more supportive environment for ourselves and others. The more we work on our own growth, the less we will feel the need to criticize others. This shift from judgment to compassion is a powerful way to transform our weaknesses into strengths. 5. The truth is twisted to fit a narrative. In the world today, many people twist the truth to fit their own narratives or agendas. This can happen in personal relationships, media, or even within ourselves. The Buddha taught that truth is the foundation of wisdom. To live a peaceful and meaningful life, we must cultivate an unwavering commitment to truth. When we twist the truth, we create confusion and suffering. We cloud our perception of reality and prevent ourselves from seeing things as they truly are. This distortion of truth arises from attachment to desires, fears, and ego. We want things to be a certain way, and so we manipulate the truth to align with our desires. In Buddhism, one of the key practices is to cultivate wisdom. Wisdom is not just knowledge, it is the ability to see things clearly and without distortion. By developing wisdom, we can recognize when the truth is being twisted and can choose to act with integrity. The practice of right intention is essential here. Right intention involves acting with honesty, clarity, and goodwill. When we commit to telling the truth and living in accordance with it, we create harmony in our lives and in the lives of others. The truth may be difficult to face at times, but it is always the path to freedom and peace. By embracing the truth and rejecting falsehoods, we transform our weaknesses into strengths. The strength of truth allows us to live with clarity, wisdom, and compassion. 6. Personal boundaries are ignored. Many people struggle to set healthy personal boundaries. We may fear rejection or conflict, so we allow others to overstep our limits. Buddhism teaches us that setting boundaries is an essential part of self-care and self-respect. The Buddha emphasized the importance of balance in all things. This includes the balance between caring for others and caring for ourselves. When we ignore our personal boundaries, we risk losing our sense of self and feeling drained or resentful. Boundaries are not about shutting others out. They are about protecting our own well-being while still maintaining compassion and kindness. To transform this weakness into strength, Buddhism encourages us to practice self-compassion. Self-compassion involves recognizing our own needs and respecting them. By learning to say no when necessary and setting limits, we honor our own well-being. This act of self-respect empowers us to show up fully for others without feeling overwhelmed or resentful. Setting boundaries also requires mindfulness. By being present and aware of our own feelings, we can recognize when our boundaries are being crossed. Through meditation and self-reflection, we cultivate the clarity to know when to assert ourselves and when to let go. This awareness allows us to set healthy boundaries that protect our inner peace and help us maintain healthy relationships. When we respect our personal boundaries, we create a space for personal growth and healing. Boundaries become a source of strength, allowing us to engage with others from a place of wholeness and clarity. 7. Wrongdoings are justified. In difficult situations, many of us may justify our wrongdoings. We may make excuses for our behavior, telling ourselves that we had no choice or that the circumstances were unfair. Buddhism teaches that justifying wrongdoings only perpetuates suffering. It prevents us from taking responsibility for our actions and learning from them. The Buddha emphasized the importance of personal accountability. Every action, thought, and word has consequences. To live a virtuous life, we must take responsibility for our actions, even when they are difficult or uncomfortable. Justifying wrongdoings only deepens the cycle of suffering, as it keeps us from acknowledging the harm we have caused. To turn this weakness into strength, Buddhism encourages us to practice repentance and forgiveness. Repentance is not about self-punishment but about recognizing our mistakes and seeking to correct them. Through repentance, we cultivate humility and wisdom. By acknowledging our wrongdoings, we open ourselves to healing and growth. Forgiveness is also essential. Buddhism teaches that forgiveness is not just for others, it is for ourselves. When we forgive ourselves for our past mistakes, we release the burden of guilt and shame. This act of forgiveness frees us from the cycle of self-blame and opens the door to transformation. By taking responsibility for our actions and seeking forgiveness, we turn our weaknesses into strengths. We grow in wisdom, compassion, and integrity. The teachings of Buddhism provide us with a powerful framework for transforming weaknesses into strengths. Through mindfulness, self-awareness, and compassion, we can overcome the obstacles that hold us back and cultivate a life of peace, clarity, and wisdom. Each step we take on this journey brings us closer to our true potential, allowing us to become the best version of ourselves.